today I am joined by April, who is behind Beyond Endo. She is a fellow endo sufferer and is also an endo coach. So we're going to dive in deep today to get her view on this horrible disease that we're suffering with. So yeah, welcome, April.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you, and thank you so much for your time. Like, honestly, it means so much. And honestly, what you do is just your group has like blown my mind. Like, the information on it is just absolutely incredible. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to create Inner Woman Wellness and get people on who have evidence-based information. So it's not going through the maze of information out there. It's kind of reliable sources. So that's why I'm so pleased that you're here with us today. So yeah, thank you.
You're very welcome.
So I guess how a good way to kick this off is if you just want to give an overview about yourself, your story, and what's got you here today.
Sure. So I'm sure, like most women who've gone through this, my story is not short. So I'm going to do my best to condense it down to something that's a little more palatable for us today. But I, suffered since I was a young teenager with period pains. I had a lot of pain when I was younger. And I will preface that I've just been talking to a lot of women this week that just because you don't have pain also doesn't mean that you don't have severe endo and those types of problems. So we kind of need to demystify the fact that your severity of pain affects the severity of disease, because we're actually seeing a lot of silent endo lately, which means there is a lot of women suffering that don't even know because they don't have pain going on. I just want to put that as a side note because it's an interesting finding. But in my case, I did have pretty extreme pain. And unfortunately, I thought, okay, going to a female OB, she would help me and she would understand women problems and that I wouldn't be dismissed. And quite the opposite happened, unfortunately. And she pretty much dismissed me for about 10 years of just kept shooing me away, kept telling me, you're fine, go back to work, you're fine. And I'm kind of a high octane person. So I was going pretty hard in my job at the time. I was really doing a good job in my career. I was taking off. And I just tanked, like my whole system just tanked one day. And I went to her and was like, okay, look, like whatever you're telling me is not an issue is obviously an issue. And I can't get out of bed in the morning. I have grinding fatigue. I can't function. Like I have a team to lead. I don't have time for this. like most of us, I don't have time for this. I need to fix this problem ASAP. And so she said, okay, well, you're complaining of gallbladder pain, which I to this day think is odd that I had to complain about a different organ for her to take it seriously when we're all intertwined as women. But she was like, oh, you have a gallbladder issue. Well, let's scan your gallbladder. Found a small, which we don't know to this day if it was a functional cyst or an endometrioma, because later on it was an endometrioma. So I'm not quite sure if it was an endometrioma even back then, but they just didn't, classify it properly. But she pretty much at that point said, okay, I think you do have a problem, shipped me off to a doctor, had a surgery. Unfortunately, it was a poor quality surgery. It was a cutlery iron, which even when I woke up, not knowing anything, I looked at the pictures and was like, what is that cattle prod iron doing next to my organs? That's not okay, So that's why I'm such an advocate of informed consent and doctors doing a better job talking about their methods and women investigating what methods their doctors are using now. But at that point, I pretty much was like, okay, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. The whole medical system seems to be failing me. I quit. And I went on my own quest to find answers. I was like, okay, look, I probably can do a better job finding my own way versus what they've been offering me, which is making me sicker. It's actually not making me better. So that was like a good 4 years of personal investigation of like really going deep on nutrition for myself, supplements, lifestyle, just lowering my stress level, just doing all kinds of things. Yoga really helped. And then coming back to in 2017, I did have a white excision surgery because I still was having just a little bit of grinding pain on my lower left side. And I knew it wasn't going away despite all of the crazy cool things that I had learned and that I was doing, which I still believe in and are a huge part of our healing. But had to have that. And then that was sort of the trajectory that sent me off into a new path of feeling really good and life being a whole different side of amazing compared to what I came through. So at that point, I wanted to drop it, to be honest, but I see so much injustice going on for women now that it ticks me off. And so I'm like, fine, I will do this work. I will do what I can to do my little part of the world to help women get through this problem, because it is super, super frustrating.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that just time and time again has just absolutely blown my mind, in the fact that I got laughed out of numerous doctor surgeries. I got made to feel that it was all in my head, and that my whole turning point of me setting up in a woman wellness was, if I'm dealing with this with endometriosis, I'm quite a strong person. If I wasn't, there's been so many cases of women that have actually committed suicide because they can't get a diagnosis. And if this is going on with endometriosis, it must be going on with everything else. And I talk to many women about menopause and PCOS, and they're just not being taken seriously. And it's shocking, really, the fact that, you know, it's like women make up half the world, and yet we're treated so inferiorly in a medical sense. It just absolutely blows my mind. And it just makes me so angry. Like, I just get so passionate about it, because it's just such an, in this 21st century, it's such an unfair thing to be.
Yes, it sort of like ruined my world, because I thought I lived in a very modern place that women are treated just as well, if not better, you know, in the medical system, and that bubble was completely popped, and I was like, okay, well, this is just not okay. Like, this has to change, and we need to be a part of that change, because obviously nobody else seems to be coming around to make that happen. So.
Exactly. And just out of interest, you said that you're like a really go full on person. That's exactly what I was like. And for me, my belief is that because I've always put myself in those high stress environments, I worry about everyone, I take everything on, worry about things that are never going to happen, but they could. And I really retain a lot. And I ended up like going through my own holistic, I'm still on my journey figuring it out, but I went to a herbalist, and she said, a lot of you've got so much emotion inside you. And it's things like that women just don't realize all connect and contribute. And I fully believe that my endometriosis has massively manifested due to the situations I put myself in. So are you still in that job that was so fast paced, or is that when you switched over to becoming a coach, when you were just like, it's not good for me?
Yeah, I got to a point where I was sitting in my office with a lack of sunlight and the fluorescent lighting beaming down on me, and I was like, do I really want to die here? Like, it was like this funny experience I had where it was like, I don't want to live here anymore, you know? So I packed up my office. I had a talk with my boss, and she was like, why'd you pack up your office? I was like, I don't know, I'm just leaving soon. I just feel it. And like, I hadn't actually had a plan yet. I just was like, I'm leaving this place because I'm not dying here, you know? And interestingly enough, several of the other women who were much older than me and in higher positions that I thought I was working my way to also had severe health problems, different health problems, but they didn't look healthy. They didn't look happy. And I'm like, why am I killing myself to work into a job to look like them one day, if I even make it to that point? Because I can't get out of bed right now. So this isn't worth it. So I did actually apply for a job and ended up kind of in, I think, a serendipity moment of getting hired by a coach who is a career coach. That's what she does. And I got to meet her and work behind the scenes of her business and run everything for her, basically. And I didn't have any intention at that moment of becoming a coach, but I basically got to run her business. In the process, got to start learning all of these things I've learned about really taking better care of myself, you know, feeding myself better food, got to learn all of those things while working for her, and realized I love this. I'm not going back. Like, I absolutely love this world. Yeah.
Amazing. It's just such a different mindset, really, isn't it? And I think that's what I'm like massively like, especially during COVID and stuff. And because I ended up having my surgery last year and felt really lost after it, because all I could remember is myself being in pain daily, and I felt really lost. And so I went on this journey and trying to get myself back to where it is. And then a COVID happened and I got put on furlough, and I said, right, I'm going to do it. Like, I'm going to do what I'm passionate about. And like, my health is thriving, and I feel like it's just been so nourishing for me to get involved and learn so much. Like, every day I just learn so much about women's bodies, and I'm just like, we're friggin' awesome. Like, there's so much that goes on. It's mad, isn't it?
It's true.
So yeah, that's amazing that you then did training yourself to become a coach.
Yeah, I basically worked behind the scenes with her and took all of her training and became I'm actually a professional certified coach through the International Coach Federation. And then I'd say all my health training came from actually doing this myself and just trial and error and figuring it out. Like, can I heal? Like, what can I do? And then I had a privilege of working with an actual endometriosis specialist who works at the high echelon of really helping women with endo. And so I got to work with him for several years, and I learned that accelerated my knowledge base of like, okay, now I really know the difference between the myths that exist and the things that actually really work for women. He has a very high outcome rate of helping women. So I learned a lot from him.
That's amazing. And so on your journey, what have you found has been to keep your pain at bay? Because you're a stage 4 sufferer?
I was a stage 4, yes.
Have you actually progressed that now?
Yeah, so I had it all removed through white excision, and since then I have not had any reoccurrence and haven't had any problems. There's pretty good evidence that if a doctor is doing a really good job of removing all of it, that you're not going to have it come back if, and I say a big IF, because this is where I think a lot of the debate online comes, all these other holistic things we're going to talk about are in place. So I firmly believe if you remove all the disease and then you return the woman back to a stressed out, over chemical loaded, infections, like, and none of those root causes are dealt with, then I can see where it would come back over and over and need to be dealt with. But I feel kind of lucky that I dealt with all those things first, because I kind of was very adamant about it, and then came back to have one final surgery and then was able to move on to a very different existence. So I call myself a survivor, which I know is odd. A lot of people don't call themselves that because they believe this is going to be an issue that's going to plague them forever. And I'm just saying, I don't believe that. This is not going to plague me forever, and that I'm a survivor and I'm going to move forward, that it's in remission and it's not coming back.
Exactly. And that's definitely the view I have. And I feel like out there, there's like, I actually have to take myself off of quite a lot of forums because people get very negative and set in their ways, and they're like, I'm stuck with it. And actually, with just a bit of education and learning, then actually your whole world can open up to such a different way of life, and help your health in all other aspects as well. Which I think it's just being that open, coming in with an open mind, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what did you find was your turning point for your healing? Was there anything specifically that you would really highly recommend to investigate? What was your kind of treatment plan, so to speak?
So endo is complex. And so it's a multi-system dysfunction. It's not just one part of your body, which is why, and I was just talking to my girls in my support group about this week. That's why you can't just take one pill and it goes away. And the system wants you to do that. And honestly, at the end of the day, it'd be great if it worked that way. It's like, give me my pill, it goes away. It doesn't work that way. So you have to investigate several systems of your body and several things in your world to see what's really causing the trauma, what's really causing the problem to your cells. And so for me, I wouldn't say that everyone's going to have the same journey. And that's why I'm a coach, because I think that everyone needs to approach their life and their situation differently, because I don't live in your world. I don't know where the major issues are coming in. So I like to teach women how to investigate their environment, how to investigate their life, so they can see clearly what's actually the thing that needs to change. But I will say for me, it was me getting out of that stressful environment first that I had to do. Because without that, I would have constantly been having hormonal disruptions, bad sleep, all those things were impossible to fix. And that's why I'm also a big advocate of like telling someone, just don't stress so much, is ridiculous. I think that's the ridiculous thing to say. That is just not possible. You have to find the root reasons why you're chronically stressed. Like, is it a toxic relationship? Is it, your food is constantly not nourishing and it's actually pulling energy from you? I don't know what it is, but for me, it was getting out of that stressful environment that had to happen first. Then I took stock of my food and was able to really look at, okay, what foods are really nourishing? What foods are really triggering inflammation? What's going on here? And then I was able to investigate my environment, clean out chemicals, remove things from my house that were causing, any hormone disruption. And then finally kind of circled my way back around to some of the fun stuff, which is like kind of tweaking my sleep, which I'm an Oura Ring user. So I like to hack my sleep. I like to watch what works, what doesn't. And really fine tuning things that I just, like you said, are amazing. Like things I would have never imagined are possible with the human body. And I just got so much, just a ridiculous return for the amount of investment I put in any of those things, that it was like, okay, this is a worthwhile, journey.
Perfect. And so when you touch on food,
Mhm.
question, and this is obviously people have very different views on things. What diet, like, what is your diet? What have you decided to go vegan? I've met people that worked with vegan. I've met people that keto it's worked with. Like, what has worked for you?
Sure. So I've gone deep on this because I'm a total geek on this stuff. It's really fun. And what I've learned is that there's no right diet for every woman. There is literally so much bio individuality that your environment and your genes and your microbiome is just completely different than mine. So what works for me is not necessarily what's going to work for you, and vice versa. So for some women, I actually had a talk with a naturopath a few weeks ago. They actually have a gene, I found out, where they hoard iron, and they are able to keep high iron levels despite having a presence of it in their diet. So I would say that that's probably the women who are doing really well as vegan and vegetarians, because obviously they're able to somehow get, I say obviously because it's not me, they're able to get away with not having a lot of meat in their diet, and yet their ferritin and their iron levels remain pretty constant, which is fascinating. I am not of that genetic predisposition. I tend to have low iron, and you can kind of know this because on your period, if it like knocks you out and you start losing blood in your face and you can't function, that's usually a sign. There could be other things, but that's a sign that your iron levels might be really taking a hit. And so that happens for me pretty much every time if I don't keep up my iron levels. So for me, I do eat some meat very cautiously. I eat high quality meat, and that's what I teach is like, I don't want women just going out and eating whatever. The inflammation level in the actual animal itself translates to you. So you want a really good omega-3 to 6 ratio in your animal that you're eating, which what that means is that they were just a healthy animal, not fed a lot of grains, stuff like that. They were grass-fed, let out to pasture. If they ate plants, they have a good ratio. If you eat them, you'll have a good ratio. So for me, I eat a little bit of meat. I wouldn't say I'm a carnivore by any means. I eat a lot of veggies. My proportion of meat is much smaller than what it used to be. But it works really well for me. That diet works. It's kind of like a paleo-ish without a few things like nightshades. I still don't do well on tomatoes, so I keep those kind of out of my diet primarily.
Yeah. I have you gone deep into allergies? Have you developed allergies since you've had endo? Because I've had things that I've eaten for years, and then when I got diagnosed with endo, like I just couldn't, like, it would cause a massive flare up, my lips would swell, and my eyes would just be so itchy and horrible. And I was like, I've eaten this for years, I don't understand. And then I was doing some research, and endo can trigger allergic reactions to things that you've not had before, which I thought was just incredible.
Yeah, and I'd say a lot of those can be healed, which is really awesome too. So like I've found that I have developed weird allergies to things in the past, testing with actual IgG and with a blood test, serum test. And then I was able to remove that for a time. My gut was able to heal, my microbiome would rebalance, and then I could reintroduce it. So you'll kind of find out if women start playing with things that there are things that you probably can reintroduce later. And there are things for me that I probably will never reintroduce, which is gluten and corn. Do not like me. I do not like them. So I don't eat them.
And so you've detoxed and stuff, and you live a very clean lifestyle. The thing that I have about it though is it just feels like all the fun stuff is just taken completely out. And so for me, I try and eat as healthy as I can in the week, and then on the weekend, sometimes I do want that glass of wine, regret it instantly the next day, like instantly. But it's kind of, how did you get to firstly, do you still drink alcohol, and how do you kind of still have fun, Reveal?
Totally. And I think that's a huge part, because the neuroscience of this, which is kind of the stuff I studied long before I got into the rest of this, is that if you tell your brain, okay, you're just gonna cut everything out that you love, your brain will say no. Like it's just like, that's not gonna be a thing. So you have to find ways of like swapping out things and trading them out. So for me, when I started really playing with my diet, I was telling myself, look, do you really want to be in chronic pain at the end of this month and not be able to enjoy this activity that your family is going to do? Or, your husband wants to take you out on a date. You won't be able to do that if you're in chronic pain. So is this piece of cake really worth it? And so I'd have these conversations with myself. They were like micro conversations I'd have in the beginning. And I'd almost always go, oh no, it's not worth it. Like the cake is not worth a whole day of pain. It just isn't. And I want to go out and see a movie and live a normal life. So when I started trading that out in my brain, it was like, okay, this is worth it. As far as having fun, I don't drink anymore. There are some girls that can. I don't say everyone's like that, but I have pretty sensitive liver SNPs. I've dug deep on my genetics, and I just don't do, me and alcohol do not do well. If I do alcohol, I pay for it. It's not fun. So that's the other thing. It's like, it still needs to be fun for me. And if it's not fun, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to do it. So I tell girls, if you do drink a little bit of alcohol, I'd say do activated charcoal after you're done, because it will actually bind up the alcohol, take it out through your system, and not put as much of a burden on the liver. And you'd probably wake up with a lot less symptoms. So I was telling a girl in the forum that, she goes, can I never drink again? I'm like, well, not necessarily, but I would say drink activated charcoal when you're done, because it will at least help you detox a little quicker than if you do it by yourself. But I do eat treats. So for me, I like to bake, and I will like occasionally make some chocolate chip cookies. I'll occasionally make some fun, like my sister made me a cake for my birthday. I totally indulged in a piece of cake, but they are made of different flours. So they're not, I'm never going to do gluten again. So they're typically like coconut and almond based. And then they're used, yes, and they're really tasty. I was going to say, I do not feel like I'm giving anything up when I have those things. Yeah. They're really treats. And the quality of the ingredients are so much higher that it's like, oh, it's amazing. So actually, I don't feel like I'm giving up at all when I have those treats. It's amazing. And then I have things like, I'll make my own popsicles. It's summer now here, so it'll get hot. I'll make my own popsicles. So yeah, you shouldn't feel deprived. You know, being healthy shouldn't mean that you miss out on life, but you have to get creative, and you have to get innovative, and you have to find out what works best for you, you know, getting creative with those things.
Yeah. And so obviously you say that I've definitely had those internal conversations. I weigh it up all the time. But what I'm really finding is I'm a massive believer in mind-body connection. And do you find that, like, have you on your own journey, have you done a lot of mindset work to kind of work through it? And have you found that that's had a massive effect on your health physically?
Oh, completely. I don't think that it's possible to heal from something like this without serious mindset work and serious, probably like belief set work. Yeah. So I always tell women that, like, one of my favorite books is right here. It's Man's Search for Meaning. This one got me through when I was in like really, really bad place. And this is a psychologist who went through the Holocaust and talks about what got prisoners through. It sounds kind of weird, but I know we're talking to girls with endo, so they'll get this. It was like what prisoners made it and what prisoners didn't make it. And like, what was the difference in their mindsets and their beliefs about their future that got them through. And so reading this book over and over when I was in a really bad place was like, I'm one of the people who's going to get through this. I'm not going to be one of the ones who doesn't make it, you know? And so I always tell girls, you got to find like what that is for you. It's different for all of us, but for me, like I had to have my anchor things that were like, this is the thing I'm hanging on to that's going to get me through this. And that was on this level. And then later on, I read Counterclockwise, was a gift that someone gave me. And that radically shifted my mindset about the way the medical system works versus how healing actually works and our role in it. And so she kind of ruined my life in a good way and was like, you know, your diagnosis is only a starting point. It doesn't explain you. It doesn't explain your specific circumstance. It explains a starting point of investigation. And so I always take healing that way now. It's like, these are starting points for us to go investigate what's really going on for us and how we can better, you know, learn about our bodies and support them.
I've also read a couple of stories of people that don't believe in, so say like they have a family member that's ill and they obviously get told a diagnosis. They don't actually tell the family member that because they don't let it into the brain. So to have something, if it's a really bad diagnosis, to not let that in, and it enables the body to heal itself so much more because it hasn't been conditioned by having that in its brain, which I just thought was just like, honestly, every day is a school day.
It's true. And you know, I do get into that because I'll say that the words you speak over yourself, the words you speak over others are powerful. And I don't know where the rift came in that we thought they didn't matter, and that it's further than sticks and stones will break. It's further than that. So when you speak life over things, there's studies about this, over a plant, over They did it over water crystals, which sounds woo-woo, but it's actually fascinating. If you look at the study, they took pictures from a petri dish of these pieces of crystals. And when people spoke positive things and good things over them, they created beautiful constellations. They look like snowflakes. They're really pretty. When they said, die, you're terrible, whatever, like the things morph and turn into these nasty constellations that are like, ooh, I don't like that. That's not pretty. It's not symmetrical at all. And so they've done that time and time again on plants. And it just even speaking, it sounds weird, but speaking over your house plant and saying, you're a pretty house plant. You're going to get big. You're going to grow big. They've shown that they actually do better. So one of the things I did, you just sparked, you reminded me, one of the things I did is I would speak over myself in the morning. I would say, I receive you, uterus. I receive you, ovaries. You're going to be okay. You're in alignment with the rest of the body. I don't reject you. So one of my pet peeves in the community is when girls are rejecting parts of themselves, because that actually is more harmful to your body than just receiving that your body is sending you messages and you just don't know what they mean yet. And you need to find out what those are. So yes, I'd say the mind-body connection is huge. And we probably are only scratching the surface of what we even know about it. But it's super important to watch what words are spoken over you and that you speak over other people.
And I think for women as a whole, like, it's just give yourself a bit of love. Like, I've spoken to numerous people this week, and the same message is coming forward. Like, women can help themselves so much more if they just give themselves a break and stop being hard on themselves, give themselves some love, and say, do you know what? Actually, you're doing okay. And I'm my own worst critic, and I'm really working on it. And I now celebrate my daily wins, and I give myself a chance. And I used to hate my body. I was like, I can't believe you've done this to me. It was my enemy, and I hated it, and I battled it through and through and through. And you just can't work that way. So now I just listen to it so much more. Like, if I still suffer with my periods, it completely wipes me out. And I'm like, right, okay, today is a chill day. Today is a relaxing day. It's just some gentle stretching, just to, and not beating myself up about it. And I feel like women, we take everything on, and we get angry at ourselves if we can't just carry on going. And it's just taking that time. And it is just about learning and the education. I feel that the education out there is just, it's to start off as like, teenage girls going through puberty, you get told, I mean, not even a tiny bit scratching the surface of what it's like for women's health as a whole. And I feel like maybe that's where we start with in schools, is teaching a bit more detail and actually teaching about mindset, because it affects so much of your life. And I'm such a big believer in the fact that if that was spoken about and taught in school about mindset, and kids are spoken to in a different way, not, oh, she's not great at maths, or she's not great at this, then we could have the world could be a completely different place if people had been taught that at school. So maybe that's what we start campaigning for.
Yeah, and I think, there's a huge component of, like you're saying, women's health that's not addressed at all. And I'm really passionate about it. And I'm only scratching the surface of this, body of research now about how to use your hormones for performance. So I feel like we didn't know, or at least I didn't know, that I lived in a very man's world of the 24-hour day cycle, and trying to match my hormones to that just would never work. So I get up and I try to do the Groundhog Day thing, right? Where I get up and I'm going to get to work at this time, and I'm going to be in these meetings for this long, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you're a man, that might work because they have a hormone cycle where they get the boost of testosterone. They have all of it throughout the day. They cycle off the whole day. They end the day. If you ever lived with a man, don't talk to them at a certain hour because they're a grumpy bear, because their testosterone is gone and they're ready for bed, and it's over and the whole thing starts over again. Well, we don't work like that at all. So it depends on what part of the cycle you're in. Are you in follicular phase? You're going to feel more outgoing. You're going to feel a little bit more bright-eyed, bushy-tailed about new ideas. Coming up to ovulation is going to be like a creative time where you want to harness that and like write down and journal your ideas and start doing things in the world. Luteal phase, you're going to start going inward. And like you're saying, all the way to the menstrual cycle, you're going to be like, not so into things. You're going to be more into introverting and not talking to people as much, and maybe being more introspective. And like you, I used to beat myself up about this every month. I'd be like in luteal phase, and now I realize this in hindsight, and I'd be like, come on, be like follicular phase, push hard, be creative. couldn't do it. Well, I wasn't in the right hormonal space to do that. So that alone is like rocked my world, just like working with my cycle and trying to find times to do those types of activities in the right space, and then not physically and mentally beating myself up about when the fact that my body's not there. It's not in that phase.
Yeah, and I think that's what I think's become abundantly clear to me at the minute, is tracking your period is key, just to get an idea, just to get to know yourself so much better and have so much more control and knowledge over what's going on with your body. And I feel like for years I was like, oh, don't need to track that, like it's just pain, it's just a nightmare, like. And now I'm actually realizing it unlocks so much if you can just work with it and figure it out and track it. So it's definitely something that at the minute I'm on multiple different hormones for the endo pain that I was getting. So I'm trying to like get myself off of it in a way that I can then start to really connect with my body and track it and get into a bit more cycle. But that's the joy of going to doctors, when they're like, take this hormonal birth control and take this one and just keep adding it on and everything will be fine. So yeah, any women out there that is doing that, let's just take a minute and let's do some research and not go down that road. So on your group, you've got some really amazing guides on how to detox your home, which this is another thing that I'm really investigating at the minute. And now I kind of see that everything I've got in my house is not good for me. So I'm trying to weed it out as I go. But how would you start? Like if people were just like, oh my God, what do I do? How do you start? I mean, I've got into natural skincare and it's completely been so beneficial for me. So that's been my start, and kind of break it. I've got a metal water bottle on its way to me. So I'm taking those small steps. But what would you suggest for people to start detoxing?
Yeah, so I think you mentioned a really good place to start, actually, which is anything that is going to go in you is going to be really hard to detox. As far as, so we have in you, on you, and around you, right? Those are the three things that we need to investigate. So if it's going in you, it's going straight into your body, straight in direction with your cells. They're going to have to deal with that, process it through the liver directly. So I'd say if you are drinking, because more than half of our body is made of water, if you're drinking out of plastic water bottles, I do go after those first, because typically those are high in BPA plastics, and they do leach into your water. So I'd say for women who are doing that, which is kind of funny with COVID that everyone went and bought plastic water bottles. I was at the store when this was happening. It was just a weird day of it going on. And someone was like, do you want this flat? And they thought they were helping me. They're like, do you want this flat of water? I was like, no, I don't drink out of plastic water bottles. And he was like, what? Like he was just like looking at me like I'm a crazy person. I'm like, no, I quit drinking out of plastics like years ago. It doesn't matter to me that there's a virus, like still not going to drink out of plastics. But anyway, it was like, he did not know what was wrong with me. It was really a funny moment. I was like, okay, anyway, it's a different discussion for a different day. So I'd say switching out from plastics is a really good start, and especially ones that come into contact with your food and your water. So in the kitchen, getting really sustainable, whether they're glass containers, or, which they have really nice ones now. When I started, it was kind of hard. So they have really cool ones now, or a stainless steel reusable water bottle. It's great for your body. And if you're like me and you like the environment, it's great for the environment because you're not constantly throwing things in a landfill that don't break down. So it has a double benefit. So I'd start there and then work your way into plastics in your food. As far as, you don't want any BPA lined cans. So this is another reason why eating out of processed foods can be bad, is that you're getting plasticizers and things, in your food chain. So removing those, or knowing that the brand you buy from does not use BPA plastic liners, because what they're doing is they're actually cooking the food. If you think about it, they line that, they put the food in, they cook the food usually in the can. That's how they usually do it. And so you're getting cooked plastic in your food, which is, it's pretty bad. So I'd say removing stuff like that, I bought a whole set of, they have really nice glass containers now for your food. So you're also not hurting the planet by throwing away plastic bags, stuff like that. And you're not having plastic, come into contact with your food. On the further side of it, like if you're like grew up in the era, my dad grew up in an era where they would literally do TV dinners. Do not microwave in plastics. Oh my gosh, that will release so many plastics into your food. So just even stopping that is a really good place to start, because you do not want to microwave food in a plastic container. So I'd say start in the kitchen, start with the water, food, plastic, stuff like that. And then I like to go after the bathroom, because usually the kitchen and the bathroom are the two places that have the highest amount of chemicals that come into contact with your body and your skin. And then when you want to get more advanced, I go into like air detox and getting an air filter for your house, depending on where you live. Some women, I used to live on a major street, and there's a lot of studies about exhaust and your air quality affecting you while you're sleeping. So I would run an air filter at night, stuff like that.
I've got the Think Dirty app on my phone, and you just go around scanning everything in your home. You're like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. I start and I'm like, this is really fun, and then I'm like, no.
Yeah, like, no. Yeah.
It's great that it's becoming more affordable and easier for people to switch though. So because people, I swear, like the first thing say, I don't have time for that, or it's too much money. And actually it's now so much more affordable to do it, and cooking, fresh veg and so where it's coming from is such a key thing, I think. So yeah, no, I'm definitely gonna look at the kitchen. Do you filter your water?
Yes, I do. I have a reverse osmosis filter, and those have actually come down in cost as well. And I would say anyone who, I do it wherever I am. So in the city, I had one, and that was because you don't know what the city water has been treated with. So although it's been treated, most people don't know, although it's been treated with a chemical to make sure there's no bacterial contaminants, which is good. Typically then that, whatever it was chlorinated or whatever, that's not good for your body. So you want that to filter out any treatment that was used in your city water, as well as there's good evidence that just the use of drugs, pharmaceuticals, that kind of thing, actually when people urinate and they recycle the water, there's some places where they actually even recycle water, that some of those persist in water in the city. Yeah. So it depends on where you live, but I know we have women all over the world who might listen to this. So it's a good idea to get a reverse osmosis, an RO filter. It will basically get rid of all of those contaminants from your water, and you can easily drink from your faucet at that point if that's hooked up. And they're not that hard to hook up. They're like $250, not that hard to hook up.
Amazing. And so you touched upon surgery, and how important is it for I was really lucky. I had a gynecologist excision surgery straight away, no messing about. But I've heard so many horror stories. So in your group, you've actually got a list of questions that people can go in to the surgeons and say, what about this, and this, which I think is amazing and amazing information for people to have. But just how important is it for women to be educated about their surgery and what's going on?
Well, I would say before my experience, I would have thought, well, just, find a doctor you like and work with them, right? But after my experience, I have a very different take on it. And I realize now how many different techniques are still being used. And that's a talk for another day on why doctors are even allowed to use outdated surgery methods. And it's quite extensive. I've gone deep on that, but it's kind of crazy. It's even allowed, but it is. So you can't go to a doc and just because they've been doing something for 25 years, assume that they're using the most up-to-date standards of care, because they aren't necessarily. And in my case, it was an older gentleman. So he was using an old, outdated surgery method. I had no idea. So that's kind of where this whole pain of building these questions and teaching women about, well, go interview your doctor before you let them just open you up, because you don't know what they're going to do. And you don't want them to cause more harm, which is kind of what happened in my case, than good, of actually removing the disease cells and getting them out of your body. So I'd say if you're going to hire a doctor for surgery, do your homework, learn about the different techniques of white excision versus burning methods of surgery. They have very different outcomes, very different results. And really look into some of the other questions I talk about is making sure that they are a good fit for you. Just because they're really skilled doesn't mean that they're the right fit for you. If you don't feel, like we were saying, that mind-body connection matters, and this person's going to be operating on you. So if you don't feel like they're going to be a good part of your healing team, then don't hire them. Wait and go research another doctor. You can choose. So I'm kind of shocked at how many times I talk to women and they're like, what? I can go like hire or fire a doctor? And I'm like, yes, we need to start thinking about doctors more as consultants in our journey and not the other way around. We think of them as the authority on all things and that we go to them. We need to say that we're the authority on all our things and that we use them to help us. And if you don't like what they're consulting on, you fire them. You say, you know, I don't think this is a good fit, and I'm going to go find someone that may be a better fit for me.
That's such a great point. Like, I think all women just need to remember that in their life. Like, no one knows your body better than yourself. And just to trust your gut. Like, if you feel that something's not right, like, please just keep going until you find that doctor that you connect with and is giving you, actually listening to you is half the battle, I feel, with women. So thank you for that. So if people, obviously we've covered quite a lot if people that are suffering. So if people are kind of at the end of their tether, have no idea, they're really overwhelmed by everything, where would you suggest for them to start? Is there kind of any literature that you would suggest for them to learn? I mean, I'm reading How to Fix Your Period, and that book just breaks everything down, sciencey, everything for the body, and goes in deep for different conditions. So I cannot recommend it highly enough. But what would you suggest, and where should they start?
So, I mean, it kind of depends on where you are in the journey. So I think there's some girls that I've met that are really early on, they're just in pain, but they don't know what's causing the pain. No one's technically even said endometriosis to them yet. They don't know what that means. So for those girls, I would encourage them to just really look at their diet, look at their environment, and really start to take stock of those pieces of the puzzle. Because I'm not, and I think I'm kind of like waver on, like, if you catch this early enough, we don't really know that you can't kind of reverse it and actually have a good experience. So I feel like if I could go back in time and like talk to my 12-year-old self, that maybe a lot of the trauma I went through could have been prevented, and maybe it could have. So I'd say if a girl's really early on, I'd say start doing the work to find out what's really causing the inflammation, what's really causing the problem at that point. And don't mask the symptoms. Don't ignore them by any means. Do address them, but work with a doctor that will help you find root causes. So that could be an infection. It could be, there's a lot of thyroid autoimmunity in a lot of women with endo, and I have had that. So it could be one of those things, and maybe you need to go investigate that first to get that cleaned up and figure that out. And maybe you don't need surgery, is what I would say. For women who have had the surgery, you know, make sure that before, if you're before surgery, make sure you're going to see someone who's going to do a good diagnostic laparoscopy, and they're going to look everywhere, because much like splinters left behind, if you leave endo lesions, they continue to cause pain, they continue to cause problems. So make sure your doctor knows how to actually see them all and actually remove them all, so you can have a good outcome and just move on from that point. And then for women who are kind of at that point where they've had a surgery or they've had 2 surgeries, I would really encourage them to look at this other part of healing. Look at these other aspects of your life. What's causing this to reoccur for you? I don't know what that is, only you know. But look into that, because there's really no reason women should have 7 surgeries. I've met women with 8 surgeries, and my mind boggles as far as the kind of care they've received. Someone has not done them a service and told them to look at these other aspects of the root causes, and that really gets me. So do advocate for yourself. Do find the root causes.
Amazing. That's great advice. Just another question that I have. So I'm not sure whether you experienced this at all, but after my surgery, I was just constantly bleeding, like didn't stop, and it was really annoying. Hence, so I'm on the implant, and then I went to my doctor and I said, I'm still bleeding all the time, and this is just driving me nuts. So then he put me on the pill. I've actually started working myself off of it. But for women that are out there that are still suffering bleeding constantly, have you found anything that has kind of been proven to stop this in a natural way at all?
I haven't dug deep on that yet, but I'll say there was a girl in our forum right now that's what she's struggling with. And so I'm kind of prompted to learn more about it to help better in the future. But I would say that there's probably a dysregulation, or just my gut says there's probably a dysregulation between your hypothalamus, pituitary, and your glands, that your body isn't able to shut off that mechanism. And there's probably something going on there. There's definitely an underlying hormone probably issue that's going on there. So I would say work with a doctor that understands. Hormones are real complex, so you want to work with a doctor who really understands the nuances of the balance and can do a test that will give them a really good idea of what's the issue. A lot of the conventional tests out there are blood serum, and they don't tell you all the really like nuanced things about hormones. So you want a doctor that understands how to do that and can say, hey, what's the root issue behind why this is continuing to cause bleeding? What's going on here?
And you've spoken previously about in your group, the Dutch test. You said that
Yes.
that is, would you say that that's kind of the one, if you wanted to figure out where your hormones are at, you'd say the Dutch test?
Yes, the Dutch test just gives you way more information than a lot of the blood serum tests do. Those just tell you what's free floating in your blood, but not actually how your body is using and metabolizing hormones, which is what the Dutch test tells you. And I have mine on my desk. I always keep mine on my desk for teaching, but it's so fascinating because it will tell you how your adrenals are performing. It will tell you, instead of like, are you stressed? It will actually tell you if you have enough cortisol in your system to defend you against stress, or if you're tanking your cortisol systems. It's pretty amazing. So, I mean, literally your doctor can debrief not only estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and all the balance of everything, but they can tell you how your adrenals are functioning. And if there's a reason why you're chronically, stressed, it's probably because your adrenal glands are like really taxed and need some support. So I just love the Dutch test because you just get way more information. I always tell women, if you can, at least do it once in your life, if not routinely, because it will tell you probably naturally how your body metabolizes hormones. And that's really good to know as a woman with endo. You want to know if you're using the right types of estrogens or the wrong type, and the Dutch test will tell you that.
Oh, amazing. So to kind of wrap it up, what would your top 3 tips be for women?
Oh, that's hard. Okay. Top 3 tips. I would say let's start with the fact that you're responsible for your health and you're in control of this. As much as I know, going through this myself, how out of control it can feel, how your body, like you're saying, could feel like it's revolted against you. Resist the urge to play into that and realize that your body is just trying to send you signals. It's just that you don't know what they mean. So really put the power back where it belongs, which is in your seat, in your place, and start to investigate your world from a place of what is my body saying and how can I better support it as it's trying to heal. Because my philosophy that seems to be true is that your body wants to heal. It's not like it wants to be diseased, it wants to heal, but it needs help in that process. So put that back where it belongs, because your whole world will shift if you put that back where it belongs. 2 would be, don't get overwhelmed. I think we talked about that a few times. There's a lot to this. Your body's complex. Your environment's complex, right? Your job is complex. It's complex. But just take it one day at a time and really start to take stock of the things that bring you energy in the world and the things that suck your energy from you. And don't stress about, oh my gosh, I have to remove all the chemicals and all the bad food and all the bad people at once. Because I didn't do that at once at all. I took several years of like focusing each year on major goals and like making my way through them. So that's what I like to help women do, is help them just focus on one thing at a time and cleaning up that one thing. So 2 is don't get overwhelmed, focus on one thing at a time. And 3 would be, I don't know. I'm trying to think what my 3 would be. Probably that this can be a lot more fun than you think, because I think we think about healing as like, this is hard. And like you're saying, why is my body doing this? I don't have time for this. But I would say that you have time for this or your body will stop you. So it will make time for you, which you don't want. You'd rather just give it the time it's asking for. And all of these things you're going to learn about your body and about life and the way you work is actually going to be really fun. It's going to be a crazy fun adventure. So stop resisting it and just kind of give into the process. It's fun.
Amazing. I love that advice. So where can people find you in the big wide world web? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so right now I'm spending most of my time with my support group over on Facebook, and we are in Facebook groups. We're just called Beyond Endo. It's very simple. I'm also on Instagram at beyond.endo, and I try to post just fun tips and things and whatever I'm learning, I try to share there for fun. And then I'm on beyondendo.com is my website. I haven't developed it out yet. Right now it's just a portal where you can download the home detox or the bathroom detox guide right now. But I will develop that out in the future. And in the meantime, if you want the bathroom detox, you can go head over there and download it.
Amazing. Cool. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time. Like it honestly, it's been fascinating to talk to you and I've learned so much. And honestly, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Of course, anytime. This was a blast.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll loop you in when I post it up live, probably either today or Monday. But
Okay.
I've got all my platforms up and running. So yeah.
Perfect. That's awesome. And say your name for me so I don't say it incorrectly. Is it Georgina or Georgiana, or how do you say it?
Georgia.
You just say Georgia. Okay, that makes sense. Because people say it different, and I always don't want to say it wrong.
I respond to all sorts.
Yeah, they do. That's awesome. So you decided to kick off doing this too during COVID. You were like, look, this is the time to do this. I got to do this.
I wanted to do it for a while, and I kind of went into massive imposter syndrome, and I was like, oh, but I don't, I'm figuring out myself and all this, and I was like, you know what, for what I want inner women wellness to be, I want women to think of it as their platform. If they let us know what content they want to see, I will search experts out to help. And I'm just learning so much from the people that I'm asking to get involved, like yourself. And I think that's what I want it to be. I want it to be a platform for women that are like trailblazing the way for women's health and the awareness of it out there. I want it to be just a completely collaborative platform and community, and a positive one as well. I don't want it to go down the negative route, because I don't think that helps. But yeah, and then COVID hit, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And I did a lot of mindset work on like my limiting self-beliefs, and I was like, if anyone can do it, I can do it. Like, you're going to learn. I've learned on every job I've ever been to, so
yeah,
one's no different. So yeah, I'm loving it though. Like, I just love that every day I'm just absorbing so much information from everyone. Really, it's been, yeah, I'm really enjoying it.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I did a similar thing. I've been working behind the scenes for years, but I've never been like face in front of what I've been doing. So I've been working behind the scenes with the doctors and different things like that, but never like talking about myself or what I've learned and that kind of thing. So I felt like when COVID hit, I was like, this is a good time to start talking about like things that need to shift and change. And it's interesting how now here in America, like that's gone into other conversations too. Like we have a lot of things we need to shift and change right now. And for me, my mission is women's medicine, because that is the thing that really, really bothers me, and that I have most, I feel like, expertise in to help, with that process. But yeah, we need a reform in a lot of different places now.
Oh yeah, and then like my end goal is to become a certified women's health coach. So that's what I'm kind of taking those steps towards, and learning from everyone that I meet. So yeah, I think we've got a lot of change to do, but hopefully the more people kind of get to know themselves and share their knowledge and share their story, the more power it gives, the more louder it gets our voices. And hopefully, like, if we all band together, we can make some headway.
I agree. And I think a lot of it's just teaching women that they have choices, because if they know they have choices, then they don't get kind of eaten up by the system of like, this is the only way that I could ever, move forward. And if they have choices, we know that then the market shifts. And if the market shifts, then they will change their standards, because they'll go, we've lost a lot of customers because the medical system is still a business. So I want women to vote with their being a patient of something positive instead of being a patient of the system. And the system will go, oh, we've lost a lot of money, we need to change. Like, well, you think so?
Exactly.
It's good.
Completely with you. So yeah, just thank you so much, and let's keep in touch, and let's keep the story going. Sure.
Of course. I would love to talk to you anytime, Georgia. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with you. And obviously we have a lot in common on our beliefs about healing, which is fun.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
Okay. You're very welcome. All right.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.